Hello, stroke survivors and TBI survivors everywhere and their families. I am pleased to introduce a new guest today, Brayson Lee. How are you, Brayson?
Good. And yourself?
Good. Glad to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
I'm interested. I found out about BraysonLee.com. Tell us a little bit about your background with that, what you
Okay.
do with that.
Okay. Well, how it all started?
Yeah,
Uh,
there we go.
in 1981, I was an 18-year-old student, and during one of the breaks, I went three-wheel biking with some friends, and I wasn't wearing a helmet, and I flipped over, and I landed on my head. The bike landed on me, and I was in coma. I was taken to the hospital. My parents didn't know about it until the next day when they were looking for me. I was in the hospital. I was in intensive care unit for about a week. I was in coma for about a week. I was in the hospital for a month, and after that, I was in rehabilitation care for about a year and a half for my
Okay.
first round.
Okay. So what would a I'm interested in your journey and your advocacies, especially.
Mhm.
Um, Early on, just tell us about your rehab. I mean, did you feel like you were getting enough information? Were you satisfied with your care and everything they were supplying you?
Okay, one of the uh, I don't know if you call it wonderful, but one of the wonderful experiences of being injured at a young age is that you don't have a lot of expectations. And for me, when I for example when I first woke up from a coma, I didn't wake up and recognize everything. I, it was more like islands of memory, snapshots of images that I remembered. I never thought about why am I in bed all the time? Why can't I walk? Why can't I eat by myself? It was none of that uh, came to mind.
Right.
My own consciousness of my losses occurred when I left the hospital. I realized that my friends who came over started talking about a person that I was no longer known that I didn't connect with. I couldn't remember the events that they talked about. So the person I used to be became a ghost to me that haunted me. Um,
Um,
when I went to rehabilitation, again, I didn't have any expectations. I just went along, and luckily, I had a therapist, a lot of therapists, and they were all relatively young, and they were really nice with me, and I just enjoyed being with them and talk and trying to talk with them. And even when I was just even when I was um, having trouble understanding what's going on, they were there for me when I was silent. They were there for me when I was afraid of things, when I feared things, when I failed, and when I was silent. They were always there. So that helped me a lot. So uh, therapy was even though I was struggling, I'm looking back at my records, my medical records I've seen, and things like that. And yeah, I was struggling a lot. There's I had a lot of problems, but in hindsight, now that I look back at it, it was a blend of hard times and wonderful periods meshed together. Um, And what was important to me, what influenced me in therapy in the first year was the therapist and my connections with them. And I was always very proud when someone said, "I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of what you did." I couldn't get enough of that.
there's an excitement, isn't
Yeah.
there?
So I and the and what happened was I believed in everything people said. Luckily, nobody ever said I couldn't do anything.
Very
Nobody said
lucky.
nobody said that you have deficits or you have problems. They just uh, when I was struggling, they were there silent and supporting me. And when I was successful, they congratulated me. And when I was down, they were there to support me. So
I'm curious, what limitations were caused by your TBI? I mean, were you particular side affected? Is it, I know the TBI and stroke are somewhat similar, but they're
yeah,
very different as well.
well, my my brain injury uh, affected. I had a scarring in my in 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 part of my brain that's like less than a millimeter centimeter, very tiny from the brain stem. From what I
Okay.
from what the doctors tell me now is that if that injury had slipped to the brainstem, I would have been dead. Uh, uh, so so it was. I just survived by hair, and I had problems with memory. I had problems with speech. I had problems walking, moving around, and
Okay.
I have a lot of problems with speech. Even now, okay, I lived a lifetime. I lived 44 years now with
Okay.
the injuries, and I started off with severe problems with speech, and then that improved a little bit. But now that I'm 62, my my speech problems have returned a little bit. I'm a little slower with
Right.
understanding things.
What were some of the pivotal moments or milestones in your recovery process that significantly influenced your journey?
Milestones, okay. Uh, you know, on my first few days of therapy, um, you know, the infant toys where they have shapes, squares and rectangles. You have to put it in
Yeah.
right holes.
Yeah.
Well, I had a hard time with that. And when I made it for the first time, I was so proud of that. And 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 that was very significant thing for me. The the actually the thing that really struck me a lot when I went to rehab. By the time I got out of hospital and they were supposed to get me in inpatient rehab, but bed didn't open up, and my parents and my family, my friends, they all were anxious in getting me into therapy because I needed therapy right away. So the doctors switched the plans from inpatient to outpatient, and then I was able to get into outpatient care within a month. By that time, uh, I was I was everybody talked about therapy as a way to get back, and I was so anxious about that. So I was looking forward to that, and when I walked in the door, uh, I saw a sketching on the wall of a person, a guy in a wheelchair, and progressively getting up to walk up, and that struck me because I never seen that before. I never imagined it, but the hope that I got from that just just this this dissipated as soon as I turned around to walk ahead because I forgot about
Wow.
that. So
How
it's
cool.
a lot of things that a little a lot of little things that were inspirational. And all little things that you wouldn't imagine became milestones.
Yeah.
Um, going to therapy, um, uh, and meeting with my speech pathologist was very important. And every time I succeeded in was successful in something, it was a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. Achieving those victories every day, right? No
Yeah,
matter how small.
it wasn't every day. It was more like once every 2, 3 weeks. I was able to do something.
Yeah. But they add up, don't they?
They add up.
What coping strategies did you find most effective in adapting?
Okay, it depends on what period of time you're talking about. At the
Okay.
beginning, I didn't have any strategies. I was just trying to get by.
Okay. Well,
I
that's
was just,
important. I mean,
yeah,
expound on that for us.
and I was just trying to get by, and I didn't think about strategies of how to do things. Uh, and I just followed whatever I trusted my therapist. I had a crush on them too, so that helped out.
That was motivating for an 18-year-old, right?
Yeah, I was 18, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was motivating. So I was trying to do what I can so that I can hear them say that they're proud of me. And over the years, I that's when I started developing strategies. Um,
Okay.
uh, okay, as a part of therapy, part of the plan was for me to return to college, to go to college.
Okay.
And I didn't go to college and take a full load of classes. I took 2 classes. My first semester of going to college, I took a remedial English class uh, and a basic money management class. I barely passed those classes. I almost flunked it, but I barely passed it. But in that period of time, I remember when I was a, a kid, 9 years old, my parents let me take karate lessons. And my karate instructor, stayed with him for 9 years. And and one of the things that he told me, that I remember that he told me, was that if you can picture it, you can become it. He kept on saying that. That's one of the things that he said. So when I was in college, and I remember that memory came back to me, I started to develop uh, letterheads with my name and initial AA after it, because it is to mean Associate Art of Arts degree, or BA as Bachelor's of Arts, because the speech therapists I had all had MAs after their name or PhD after their names, and that's when I started. Well, what's all this about? So when I found out that, I made letterheads with my name followed by degrees as inspiration,
Nice.
because I wanted to picture it, and I pasted that letterhead on the wall of my bedroom so I could see it. So I
Very
saw every
cool.
day.
I
That's
like that.
one of the strategies that I uh, used. Um, and it might be the same way as a stroke, but with head injury, one of the problems I had was I had a tendency to repeat things. I think it's called perseverate, and I perseverated on a lot of things, but I somehow managed to turn that problem into a strength because I perseverated over the idea of going to school. So
Right.
no matter how much trouble I I experienced, I went through that. It didn't help too much, but my speech therapist had told me that going to school was our plan, and after we finished our plan, we had things to do. So I had that in my mind, and I couldn't let go of that dream. So I kept on going to school because I knew that at the end something was going to happen.
That's beautiful. That really is. How did your family, well, let's go over the last several years. I mean, How did your family, especially your wife Ling and daughter Amanda, contribute to your rehab and ongoing support?
Okay, my my wife. I didn't marry my wife until I was 40 years old, but I had my injury at 18. So
Right.
most of the things that I endured, my wife wasn't a part of it. My
Okay.
daughter wasn't born yet. It was mostly my parents and my sister and my brother
Okay.
and uh, and my karate instructor. They're the people who helped me out a lot. They My parents really basically, a lot of times when you turn 18, 19, 20, 21, you're expected maybe to finish school and go to college, go to work. Uh, and I struggled along with school, taking 2 classes a semester, and and my parents didn't pressure me about going and finding a job. So I that gave me some time to focus on learning. So that's one of the things about uh, recovering from brain injury is I think no matter how tough it is, if you can keep active learning something, it doesn't have to be a fancy degree. As long as you're learning something and keeping your brain active is going to help you out.
Yeah, the brain recovers itself when you do stuff like that.
Yeah. So so my parents helped me out. My family helped me out by giving me the time and space to pursue an education.
That's
And
awesome.
then whenever I got into major troubles, they always came in.
Nice. Uh, what ways has your TBI experience shaped your personal and professional life over the last decade, let's say,
Profoundly,
even 2 decades?
profoundly. I I remember before the injury, I wanted to be I wanted to get a degree in business management, and I wanted to be a retail stores manager.
Okay,
And after the injury, I ended up becoming a social worker. So
nice.
I became a social worker because I saw how my social worker helps me, and I wanted to help other kids too. That's where it started, and
That's
and
very
it
cool.
evolved over time. Um, I it then so it just evolved from there. So
Yeah,
everything, all my entire experience affects me every day. Influenced how I do things, the career path that I took, the jobs I've held.
hmm. What advice would you give individuals or families um, newly navigating the aftermath of a TBI?
That's a tough question. That's a tough that's a tough one to answer.
Yeah,
Uh,
because we have certain similarities, but everybody's
yeah,
recovery is different. So,
yeah. But it's a tough one to answer because okay, every injury is so different in some aspects, but there's some things that are the same, but there's a wild card, what I call the wild card. That's the personal uh your your what you bring personally to the injury, and so psychological and psychiatric component to it
okay.
that can influence how you look at your injury and how you interpret events. For example, um, there were many times where something hard happened and I just wanted to give up. Some people some people wanted to give up and gave up. I wanted to
Yes.
give up and I tried to give up, but every time I wanted to give up, my speech therapist memory of her popped in my head and she said, "We can get through this together." and that started me back again. So, um, so it's hard to say because of all those things. But basically, I think um, I would tell them that education is important. Okay, uh, education is a good thing to a certain point. Uh, and then education, when you get too much education about your condition, it can turn around and work against you. The way it works against you is you're reading about studies of people from 10 years back or 20 years back. This is what most people happen. This is what mostly happened. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you believe in it too much. You have to have enough space to let your dreams and hopes survive and grow. So education is good up to a certain point. And
You have to turn that education into action, don't you?
yeah, well, you have to turn education into action, but you also have to uh, give yourself some lee room to go above and beyond what the studies say. And this
Hmm.
is where survivors' hopes and dreams can survive. I didn't know any better when when I when I
It's a
was a
great way to
kid.
put it. Yeah.
When I was a kid, 1982, there weren't a lot of information about brain injuries. There's very little information about prognosis, like 5 years later, 10 years later. So I just moved ahead, not knowing any better, not knowing what was. I was I was I was kind of traveling down a tightrope. If I pushed myself too much, I could have I could have failed big time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you over the 44 years, what inspired you to transition into disability advocacy?
The the injury uh, influenced me to get into the helping profession, whatever capacity it was. And through my education, when I was going to school, at first I wanted to be a, a, a child psychologist.
Okay.
And then, because the only reason why is that's the only thing I knew about. Oh, there's child psychology. There's a social work. But I eventually went to social work, and I wanted to work with kids one on one. And then through school, I realized that you can help people through administration to impact large groups of people through programs. And then I started doing that. I started moving that direction. And and through my when I've completed my undergraduate school, I went to graduate school, and 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 my professor, my favorite professors, graduated from the University of Southern California, and the textbooks that I read were authored by people from University of Southern California. And
Okay.
I came up with an ingenious idea at that time. I thought it was ingenious that I'll go to the University of Southern California to study. And 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 uh, and uh, I was concerned about my getting in because it was a competitive school and things like that. But but I was accepted. And when I went there, even though I was about 7 years post injury, I was very I could be influenced by people, and the professors there were touting a new program, a policy track, where you can go to Washington D.C. and intern in in a policy arena, and they were talking about it. They were selling the idea so much that I got gun ho on that. So I want to do that too. So 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 they prepared me in that direction. And
Yeah.
once I was in DC, I realized that there's a lot of advocacy work at a policy level and at a national level, and that's where I ended up going.
Was there any specific areas within healthcare, public health, where you believe advocacy was most needed?
Um, well, that's uh, there. Okay, I started off in nursing home. Well, okay, backtrack a couple of years.
Okay.
In undergrad school, I I not before even before grad school I started volunteering at nursing homes, and I liked working there. I liked volunteering in nursing homes because the patients were nice, and they were patient in listening to what I have to say because I spoke real slow.
Yeah.
So, and I liked it that they were patient and they were excited to see me, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I
Yeah.
developed an interest in there, and so when I went to graduate school, uh, I got involved in nursing home reform, and in nursing home reform, um, I I I found out that there's a lot of advocacy work needed in terms of gathering information, gathering data to present to to present to policymakers.
Right.
Um, so that's one area of advocacy work, and need to work with a bunch of organizations together as a voice instead of one person voice. You need one organization. It needs a whole lot of organizations to come together, and that can, in terms of brain injury advocacy, I think there's a gap right now in the need to talk about a future beyond brain injury. Because right now, when you talk about, you hear about a lot of times about brain injury, and everybody who's talking about it talks about the the trauma of brain injury, the difficulty of brain injury, and and all the problems associated with it, and and when you get consumed in that, you don't think about the future. So there's a need to
Yeah.
look into the future because that's where that's where survivors, young survivors, that's where they're heading. They're heading to the future. So if you're talking about all the problems you have, all the all the all the bad things that you're experiencing, that becomes the focus. So that's the lens that you look at when you look in the future. All this
Yeah.
awful things. So I think there's a positivity, certain things that's possible. You got to paint a realistic picture of what's possible and what can be accomplished. Um, I think that for survivors or most survivors, they have to discover on their by themselves and on their own pace to discover that there is something ahead.
Right.
You can't tell a survivor, oh, in 10 years now, this is what you're going to do. This you're going to do that. Because if you're a kid, a young survivor who's like just a year into it, you can't see that far. You can't believe in it. They have to believe it in themselves for it to come out.
Hmm. I like that. I was real interested in reading your history. You did some work from with the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, that was wonderful.
Not
The
bad.
the, the first thing was, I think that happened in 1988, 89, somewhere around there. the 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 staff were very good with me, and they were very patient with me, very kind. The senator, when you work in D.C., you don't rub elbows with senators. They're doing their thing. And they have a bunch of staff that reports to them. But I did some of the groundwork, and and uh, and 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 they were very supportive of me. They 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 realized that I didn't do well interacting with people, so they gave me jobs that I could do.
Okay.
And one of the things that I was able to do was add up numbers, and 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 at the time, they had a hearing on prescription drug pricing,
Okay.
and you might have heard that because they still talk about it now.
Yeah.
But at my desk were 10 years of records from the federal FDA, records from all the 10 pharmaceutical companies, and I tallied up all the uh, medication drugs that were approved, denied, and all the class, and I tallied it up, and I did a good job. They liked it. It became it became the centerpiece for prescription drug pricing hearing. I can't remember
Nice.
the exact uh, results, but it was something. Okay, FDA approves drugs based on three classifies drugs based on three categories. One of is 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 what they call a Me Too drug, just a copycat drug, and the next drug. Well, they didn't call it Me Too drug. The Senate staff called it Me Too drug because it's basically a copycat drug. The second class is some contribution to existing therapy, and a first class drug was significant contribution to existing therapies. And through my number crunching, it came up with, for every C drug, which is a copycat drug, for every 33 C drugs, they produce one A drug, which is significant contribution. So what I figured out was most of the money spent prescription drug pricing cost was centered on Me Too copycat drugs instead of
Wow.
that was something like a significant contribution to um, therapy. So that became the centerpiece.
Wow. That's
So,
pretty cool.
so
That is really cool.
that was thrilling.
Yeah. You also became a little bit more into policy development for disability rights, right?
Uh, no, not really. I got interested in disabilities and
Okay.
advocacy. Um, and that came through like a transformation. It was a
Right.
transformation of my thinking from I was thinking from nursing home reform to to just uh, disability areas to brain injury areas. Um, what was the question again?
Well, I was asking about your involvement with disability rights. I mean, you've got writings in various reputable journals. I mean, what kind of messages are you trying to convey through the publications and your work?
Oh, okay. Uh, I wanted to communicate that there's a life beyond brain injury. Don't you don't not I should say don't. Okay, when you're in the midst of all your troubles in the first couple of years, that's all you think about, and
Hmm.
it's hard to envision what it could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. And I'm just trying to communicate the idea that there's hope ahead, and there even and that you can live a good life even when you have impairments.
Right.
Uh, one of my one of my one of my essays is called difficulty deficits. Difficulties are deficits are not difficulties. No, difficulties are not deficits, because a lot of times in the clinical world, people use the word deficit, but in the special education world, they 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 talked about how deficit was blaming the student for their own problems. That there's a deficit. There's something wrong with you.
Right.
You and I'm trying to in that article I'm trying to say that that my difficulties are not deficits. They're not. You're not born with it. You can get better.
Yeah. I think part of that is you've maybe had a difficulty, but you didn't lose your intellect.
Yeah. There is some. There is a little gap, not a little thick gap, but there's a little something where I have to say that there are some problems, difficulties that you can't overcome,
Agreed.
but you can find a way to work around it. I,
How do you go ahead?
I, ca- writing was not my skill. I couldn't even put a sentence together one in the first year that I was in therapy, and it took a lot of practice and it took a lot of tutoring and a lot of people editing my school reports to say, "Well, this is how you should write it." This is, or
Okay.
editing. And through um, through all these years, I forgot what I was talking about. But what I'm trying to say is that 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 I got excited and got
No,
sidetracked.
we were talking about your publication work. I mean, the messages that you're trying to get out there with your publications and disability rights.
Okay, yeah, I there's a lot of work, and there's some things that you may not ever overcome, but you can work around it. Oh, that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, through that all that difficulties, I unexpectedly developed a skill in writing.
Right.
So what was started off as my weakness became my strength, which is writing. And I used writing to overcompensate everything that I was having problems with. So after a while, people knew me from my writing, that they didn't see that I have a hard time talking, speaking, or answering
Oh,
questions, because
how interesting.
they were consumed about, well, Brayson is a good writer. His report writing is very good. So that in a way, that that what starts off as a strength becomes what starts off as a weakness becomes a strength, and then by focusing on my strength, I was able to overcompensate, and people saw my strengths and did not see my weaknesses, or if they saw it, they kind of brushed it off because the person had some strengths.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how I was able to secure a job. My I had 30 years of employment, and that's how I developed my career. Is that people saw my strengths so much because that's all I showed them was
Then
my
look
strengths.
past the other stuff, right?
They passed the other stuff, and I developed a career just by focusing on what I'm able to do.
What's some of your aspirations for the future disability advocacy, particularly concerning TBIs?
Okay. Um, you know, I I have a vision, and sometimes the vision is may not occur, may not transpire to reality. But my vision is that one day, some young survivor will hear about my what I've been able to do, and I hope that they will one day push themselves so they can achieve more than I achieved. That would be great.
That would be great. Find their own strengths, right?
Yeah, through their own strength. But 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 the, but that's the vision. But what I'm hoping is that through through telling my story, through sharing my hopes and what 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 motivated me and all the problems I had, that I'm able to show that those difficulties that you have are valid concerns, are valid things. But through a lot of a lot of painstaking work, uh, and a little luck, you 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 can get somewhere, and
Yeah.
that they will find their own paths to their own futures. And
Oh, I love that.
I'm hoping that parents and spouses will read this and have a little hope for them that that maybe their spouses, injured spouses or injured children has they have a chance. I
Beautiful.
did I tell did I include in one of my writings that I wrote a memoir?
Yes, I saw that you were writing them. You have a manuscript and you're working on a publisher, right?
Yeah, I'm represented by two. Okay, that that first. Okay, I wrote the memoir 30 years ago.
Oh, really?
That's when I first started, and my first draft was I finished in 2 years. It was 500 pages, unedited, and that caught the attention of Superman's agent, Christopher Reeve's agent.
Oh, wow.
Somehow found out about my story, and so he wanted to read it. So I said, "Okay, well, I showed it to him." I got a review saying that this is unprofessional, unedited manuscript and needs to be edited. So so that's when I decided. Well, that's when I learned when you finish writing something, it has to be worked on over and over and over and over. So that became the rewriting process, and that rewriting process took 20 years roughly, and that caught the attention of of Lee Woodruff, New York Times bestselling author, and she was so impressed with the story that she wrote a book forward to it.
Oh, nice.
And then and I attracted a literary agent, and I attracted. Okay, I ended up getting more than 15 endorsements from other New York bestselling authors, uh, award-winning journalists, and academic scholars. They all said something very nice about it after they read the story, and it's now being circulated through to major publishers for their consideration.
Wonderful. And that's called without a helmet, right?
Without my helmet, because I wasn't wearing a helmet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a few minutes left. Anything you want to add to today's discussion?
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me. Uh, this is wonderful, and I don't have any thoughts right now. So the other thing is that over a period of time, 40 years now, 62, and I have to admit that I am most alert between 6 in the morning and 12 in the afternoon. And after 12 o'clock, I start winding down.
Yeah,
Or at least my brain,
that's typical for stroke survivors too.
it's, it's kind of like my brain gets tired and I
Uh-huh.
start winding down. And, and when I'm talking, like right now, I've been talking with you for maybe an hour or so, or
About
close to it.
45 minutes. Yeah, yeah.
And, 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 and as you've probably noticed throughout our conversation, sometimes I lose track of what I'm thinking about, what I'm
Uh-huh.
talking about. So by 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 5 o'clock tonight or 6 o'clock, I'll be ready, getting ready to go to sleep.
I love it. Well, thank you for being with us today, Brayson. How can people find out about your website or anything else?
My website is at www.braysonlee.com. I have a LinkedIn account. Uh, I've signed up for it. It's Brayson Lee, and that's where I post updates and news about what I'm doing. Uh,
Awesome.
in my website, you can access all, not all, but most of my writings that you can
Yeah, I
use.
saw that on one of the pages. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
they can
cool.
access it and download it and keep it for themselves, or they can share
Wonderful.
it with other people who might benefit from it. So my wish is that the word spreads, and
I
that
like that.
and that and some light will come through.
Well, Stroke Warrior Radio will do their best to share your story as much as we can too. I hope to talk to you again, Brayson. This was fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You take
Bye.
care.